Good morning, everyone. I'm Kevin Allen. I'm joined by my usual broadcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, who played 11 seasons for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. This is the Laidlaw and Allen Report. Come to you twice a week, talk all things hockey and a little bit of cooking, a little bit of this and that. And we're going to start with hockey today, Tom, because, I've been following the free agent situation. And I started to wonder about for normal people, once they start to achieve this level of income, I would think they're pretty set for life. But you and I know that always isn't the case, that sometimes athletes get themselves in financial trouble, even though they have a great, an exceptional salary base. So where are we in that, do you think, with hockey players? Do you think 90% of them are set for life, that they know what to do with their money, their agents get them involved in the right things, or do we still is it iffy on whether or not they're...
That's a great question. So what would we put the average salary at? $4 or $5 million right now? Is that?
I think it's closer to 2.9. That's just a guess, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, so let's say it's $3 million, and I think the average player, once they come in and establish themselves as players, let's say plays 10 years, so that's $30 million they'll receive on the average. In most places, Canada and a lot of places, that is it 50% tax. Fair to say that now you're down to
for sure.
So you got to pay your agent on that, your expenses. So 15 pretty quickly goes down to $10 million. Well, I mean, for most people, you should be able to survive with $10 million in the bank, right? That's pretty good retirement nest egg. But part of the issue with the players now, though, is too that they start living this lifestyle, and there are people around them start to assume that lifestyle is going to continue after. And that so let's say you make 8% on $10 million, so it's $800,000 a year you can make in retirement. You got to pay taxes on that again. So let's say you're down to $400,000 you got to spend. A lot of these guys, they're flying around in private jets, going on vacations, limousines all the time. So I guess doing the math like that, I would say that, not everybody is set that way. Again, you've got the big name players that are making a ton of money, and obviously they're all set. But I do think players are smarter now. They've heard a lot of stories. But again, players still have that mentality that nobody's ever going to hurt them. Everybody loves them. They're, you trust it. I'm an NHL hockey player. Nobody's ever going to do it to me. And that's how people get burned in the past. That's how I got burned in the past too. With I've told you before, where I had the agent Kaminsky that got us into the 4-to-1 tax write-off, and I'll never forget him saying it was. So I was putting in $12,500 a year. I was only making $60,000 when I started doing this, so I was writing off $50,000. I didn't qualify for it. I never should have been in it. And I remember him saying to me, "Wow, Tom, nothing's gonna happen. If it does, it'll be in 10 years, and the IRS won't be able to find you." Well, 10 years went by, and the IRS sure as heck found me, and I had to write a big check for it. So, it still continues to happen. Again, I don't hear as many stories about it now, not being in the agent world, but I think it'll just be something that always goes on. I think athletes are easy people to prey on. So,
yeah. Well, it is kind of interesting, and I do think that's it's a little bit of human nature that you sort of live to your current salary with no concern about what may lie around the corner. I think that's true whether you're making 50,000, 100,000. I mean, you operate as if you'll always have this $50,000 job or your $100,000 job or $3 million job. And, honestly, when you're down in the 50 and 100,000, that's just, real life. You don't anticipate you're going to lose your job.
Yeah. So, it's funny. You have me thinking, though, too. We had an alumni game the Rangers and the Islanders played, which was like 2 or 3 months ago. And some of the more current players for the Rangers were playing with us. And we're sitting on the bench and chatting away. We don't know each other that well. And with a couple of them, I said, "So what are you doing for work now?" And they both kind of looked at me and they kind of funny. Well, I've got rental properties. Like, I'm not working. Like, you have to say I'm not working. I've got rental properties. So it seems like that's, these guys now, they can invest in properties, collect the rent, and that's how they make their money. So.
Well, and then there's the other angle too, with regard to, you get done with your hockey career, and if you're lucky, you're in your late 30s, but sometimes you're 34, 35. Yeah. And I remember when Mario Lemieux came back out of retirement. He retired early, obviously, for all that he had gone through in terms of injuries and illness and such. And I remember him telling me in a real candid moment, it sounds romantic. You're going to play golf every day and you're going to do this and that, but there's just so much golf you can play.
Yeah.
And then it becomes not, it's mundane, But, part of the lure of golf is finding the time to do it. It's the fun of, okay, maybe I could squeeze in 18 here. Maybe I could do this. He had played his share of golf and he was ready to come back. And I think a lot of people find even they just want to do something to be productive as opposed to, just sitting aroid in their.
Yeah, I've heard stories of players that call up their former teams and say they're begging for a job, and it's not about the money. They're just, like you said, they're sitting around doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, and there is some people are just not cut out for retirement. I lost my job with USA Today. I considered it. I was at the retirement age. I'm beyond full Social Security, but I didn't like it. I needed the action. I needed to be a part of it. I needed to. I don't know who regular Kevin Allen was. Was Kevin Allen of USA Today, and now, I have a different couple of publications.
And I've really learned too that sitting back and not doing anything, I think that really hurts people. There's sciences behind it, mentally and physically. It's not good for mental health, I don't believe. I guess some people in retirement can stay busy and do other things. Maybe they donate their time to charity or whatever. But I think, it's important to keep moving. But
yeah,
it's a great question, though. It's a great thing to think about with athletes. What happens to them, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a great in the title of the book was just perfect. When the applause, I think, stops. I think Gordy and Colleen Howe were involved in that book, and and I think it's hard. Not just financially, because some people do have good advisors who get them, set up. But I think emotionally, it's a little bit difficult too. You're used to being, the big man on campus, pro style, and then over time, like there are a lot of people who don't know who Tom Laidlaw is, even though people of a certain generation who are Ranger fans certainly do, Tom, but. You're going to there are 35-year-old Ranger fans that just have no clue of the impact you had. And,
that's very true. You're making me think now. So at the end of my career, I'd hurt my back. I knew my career was winding down. I'd gone to training camp with the Kings. It's clear I couldn't play anymore. And I'll never forget, Rogie Vanshaw called me up to his office and said, "Tom, your career is over with." And even though I knew it was coming to an end, man, that feeling of walking out of the Great Western Forum, you go up the ramp there to where we parked our cars. I was shaken. I knew it was coming, but all my life I'd been on a team. I always the pattern was summers off, get ready to go to training camp. We were with the guys all the time, and all of a sudden now that was over. And you're right, I got right into the agent business right away, as you know. You and I became good friends at the start of that, and. Even like things like I'd never booked a car rental before, or a hotel or a flight. The teams had always done that stuff. And now all of a sudden I'm starting this agent business and I've got to book my own stuff. And it was a big deal. When I was 33, 34 years old. And it was this big deal for me to start booking flights. And even, normally you'd go to the corner gas station, the guy that, he's pumping your gas for you. "Hey, Tommy, how you doing? Can I fix your car for you for free or whatever?" Now all of a sudden you're going down the corner gas station. You're standing in line like everybody else. Get your car fixed. And even checking into hotels when I go on the road, they'd look at the last name and Laidlaw. I'm thinking, okay, please, hopefully you'll remember who I am. And most of the times is Laidlaw is a bus company up in Canada there. And they go, "Are you with the bus company?" Oh, Jesus, no, I played in the NHL. Oh, it was funny. Although it's interesting you brought that up, because that's definitely part of it. And again, I was somewhat easier for me because I really wasn't that star player. I wasn't Ron Duguay. I wasn't Ron Greshner. I wasn't Barry Beck. Certainly wasn't Wayne Gretzky. So it was, I wasn't, people would know me, especially when I was with the crowd with the rest of the team. But I could be places, especially playing in New York or Los Angeles. You could go places where nobody knew who you were. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Well, certainly that didn't happen to me as a writer, but I did have one funny, humorous incident. I was in a press box and a guy came up to me and he shook my hand. He goes, "You're Kevin Allen?" And I said, "Yes, indeed." And he said, I'm Kevin Allen. My name is Kevin Allen. And
Oh,
he says, I was renting a car. And he said, I went up and the guy said to me, he saw my name. He goes, are you Kevin Allen, the hockey writer for USA Today? And he goes, I thought real quick and said, yes, I am. He said, thinking I might benefit from that. And he said, the guy engaged me and he goes, I knew a lot because I worked in a press box. He said, I knew enough about it. I could fake my way through it. And I said, well, what did you get out of that? And he goes, I didn't get a darn thing. And I said, well, that's what I get to. So
that's funny. That's something you tried though, anyways, right? Didn't I have a secretary where an agent do that stuff for you? No, when I started my agent business, I'll never forget this because I really, like I said, typical naive athlete. I knew my career was coming to an end, but I really didn't know what I was going to do. And again, as training came on, I thought, okay, I was going to get in the agent business. But it was just me. I started my own business, Laidlaw Sports Management. I never forget putting brochures together and everything. Brian Berard was probably a year or two into it. I started recruiting Brian Berard. I'd heard about him, and his first name obviously spelled with a Y, Bryan. So I sent out a letter to his family with Brian. And if anybody knows Brian's mother, Pam Berard, Kevin does, she had no problem telling me that I was wrong too. she made sure in her way, Tom, it's spelled with a Y, right?
Yeah. Oh boy, that's starting your career out on the wrong foot.
Yeah,
totally. Wrong side of Pam Berard. So
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like she's one of those women. It's like you respect her and her, more her family than I don't think she cared as much what you did to her, but you don't do something to her family. So
yeah, I spent a week with Wally and Pam Berard in Mexico City, covering the under 18. And there were Brian was playing, the Bouchers were there as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Danny Lacouture's dad, who was a PE teacher, was there. Buckley's dad was there. I got to know all these, families because I was covering that, that tournament. And I've got to say that the Bouchers and the Pam and Wally Berards, I mean, that was one of the most memorable trips I've ever had in hockey. Like I still remember, it was very vivid. They were just very outgoing people, and I just remember Danny Lacouture's dad spent the entire week in shorts. He was a PE teacher, and he looked like that. He wore a T-shirt that said whatever the high school was, and he looked like that, and he didn't. I think he didn't eat anywhere other than Burger King because he didn't trust the water and the all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
And Wally Berard, he plays the part too. Like he's the guy that would ride the motorcycle into the bar, and he had the tattoos and everything. And he didn't do it as he was older, but that was the story about him. Everybody's like, "Oh no!" Wally.
Yeah, the also I remember too is that if you've been to Mexico. I mean, this has been a lot of years ago, but I'm sure it's still true today. A lot of the workers there don't make a lot of money. And we went on this tour of the ruins and the pyramids. And, it was a great tour. And when we were all filing out, people were leaving tips. And Wally and Pam didn't have a lot of money, as Tom will attest to. But Wally gave that tour guide the biggest tip of anybody. I happened to be behind him, and he didn't have much money, but he gave him a pretty significant tip.
And that pretty much sums up the Berards right there, right?
That's who they were. They were just really, really fine, fine people. So,
so Barry's got a question. How does that work? I know he just take a percentage from the players. No upfront fee. So that's one of the interesting questions, Barry. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for your service again too. Barry's a veteran. So that right now, when I first started in the agent business, you could go get the top players and recruit them, like Brian Berard and Brian Boucher, around 16 years old. Now that's down to 12 or 13 years old to recruit these players. And again, you don't get an upfront fee from the player; it's all expenses at that point, and you've got to go out and watch them play and do everything. So say you get them at 12 years old, they don't get drafted till they're 12. Most players don't turn pro at 12. You don't get drafted till 18. And most players don't turn pro right away. So let's say they turn pro at 20. So that's 8 years of all expenses that you're paying on that player. So that's the thing about the agent business. You do see, again, once they get established and they've got a lot of clients, they typically charge 3%. So if a player's making $10 million, it's a lot of money, $300,000 a year for one player. But again, you're paying a lot of expenses, and there's no guarantee that player will even turn pro. So it's an
and I don't think you did this, Tom, or maybe you did and I just didn't know it, but some agents do cap it, because at some point,
Yeah.
Like if you're getting 3%, whether you're doing a $1 million contract or a $10 million contract, some agents do say, look, once you reach a certain level, the most you'll pay me is, 200,000 a year or whatever it is. But many of them don't. Many
No,
of
I know. Yeah.
them do not cap at that too. I did want to tell one funny story about Mexico City. It's one of the more memorable. I think all 9 people from Mexico who liked hockey came to that tournament. The crowds were
Sparse.
non-existent. If we had, 30 people there watching, that was a big crowd, and that didn't count the parents. We had more parents than people in the stands.
Yeah.
And the Americans were playing the Russians, and it was a great game, and it was back and forth, and it was tight. And the Americans, somebody jumped over the boards when they shouldn't, and the Locature's dad, the PE teacher from Massachusetts, was watching very closely, and he stood up and he said, "You idiots! You got too many men on the ice." And the referee, who hadn't noticed, around, counted the guys, raised his hand, and blew the whistle.
Oh, God. Oh.
And everybody looked at Mr. Lockenshire, and he sheepishly sat back down, realizing that he had cost his team a penalty that they had not seen. So it was a really funny moment. And especially the men in the crowd really enjoyed giving it to.
Oh, is that right?
After that.
And the poor kid on the bench too. Like everybody knows that's his dad, right? And,
so yeah, no, it was pretty. It was a real hilarious moment. I don't remember, to be honest with you, whether they won that game or not. But it was really good. Hey, a couple other things to talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, real quick question: do agents have a contract for players for how long they must? So the bulk of the time I was agent, there was no contract, but the Player Association inserted a standard player agent contract, and you cannot change the language of the contract. It only runs for the term of the contract that you negotiate for that player. So if you negotiate a 3-year deal, that's how long your term is, and it's you can't change it. So it's a two-way street too. There's sometimes when a player wants to fire an agent and not pay him, but if you sign that contract and he's done nothing wrong, then the player has to pay him, and vice versa. And again, it's really important now for the agents to get that contract signed every time they do a contract. So. Yes.
Yeah, but like sometimes the timing is everything. Like Dylan Larkin, just who's going to get a real big contract here, he just changed agents, and now he's going to go get this contract. Now his former agent doesn't get any money, right?
No, not at all. The flip side of that is our boy Eichel in Vegas. He fired his agent about 2 or 3 years into a long-term contract. So unless the agent dropped the ball and didn't get a contract signed between him and his player, then he's still got to pay that agent. So,
yeah, interesting. I want to talk a little bit about the Matthew Tkachuk situation.
Yes. I forgot about the offer sheet. I forgot about that.
Yeah, well, they don't now. They can't do it because they filed for R. But I don't think there would have been one for 2 reasons. First of all, I don't think Matthew Tkachuk would sign one because he doesn't. If he doesn't want to stay in Calgary,
right,
because they can match it, and then he has to play in Calgary.
But he could sign a 1-year deal, though, right? So if he goes to arbitration, he's going to get a 1-year deal, which is what's going to happen now.
Right.
So he's still stuck in Calgary for another year. If he had got a 1-year offer sheet, like what's his name in Carolina did, that was with Montreal, he could then leave. Or if they match it, then he's in.
Yeah, he's there, but so like what would they? So say they just offer him like $13 million. Don't you think Calgary would match that?
Yeah, but again, now that Calgary's taking him to arbitration, he's going to be in Calgary for another year, anyways.
Well, is he though? And that's what I want to talk about. I just think we've reached the point now in the NHL, and especially really brought home by the Johnny Gaudreau saga in Calgary. And I don't know, and I wrote this column today, I don't know that the failing of the Calgary Flames management was in Johnny Gaudreau leaving.
Yeah.
The failure was not recognizing that he was likely to leave, and then failing to move him and get assets in return. Like you can't legislate someone's attitude. Like if they're not going to sign, and I think this is where you got to ask direct. Like my take now with Tkachuk is you go to him and say, let's be professional about this. Yeah. If you're not coming back, and if you just are leaning in that direction, can you please tell us? And if you do, we'll be as professional and as accommodating and as respectful as we can to get you to where you want to go and to help you out. But, if you don't help us out, we don't know what's happening, and we could end up really hurting our franchise. And, you've said really good things, which he has, about Calgary. There goes the Coyote now, still walking across my backyard again. Wherever he went, he's back now.
So. Wants to watch the show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But and I think there's got to be honesty here. You got to hope that the player is going to be respectful. Right. They say the right things, even when they want to go. And I'll give you an example of where I think everybody should be on this. When Zach Parise several years ago left the New Jersey Devils, he told me, one of the things that I did not look forward to was that call to Lou Lamoriello. Yep. And he made that call, and Lou Lamoriello couldn't have been more professional. He said, I understand completely, Zach. I understand that you want to go home. Players often feel that way. I wish you the best. You were a great performer here, and I appreciate, the time you put in here. Well, if you kind of have that attitude that, players are going to have to do what's best for them because you always do what's best for your team, you get a better situation. And I think that's what's going to happen, or what should happen with Matthew Tkachuk here. I've known the Tkachuks, and you have too, for a long time. They're a pretty honorable group.
Yes, they are. Yep.
So I think if you ask him directly about what he's thinking and where he's leaning, he's liable to tell you.
I agree. Totally. Well, and the fact that he didn't file for arbitration pretty much tells you that he doesn't want to stay there, right? Because if you file for arbitration, like you said, if they had not filed, he then would have been able to receive an offer sheet and go someplace else if that was going to happen. But I guess, I hear you, and I do agree with you. But here's the issue. So with Johnny Hockey, so the Calgary Flames, in my mind, a lot of people's minds, were a contender to win the Cup this year, especially once the season got going. And he's the leading scorer. He scored 115 points. So I'm thinking, okay, do they trade him, even though they're going to lose him and get no assets? Do they trade him during the season at their leading player, and then they don't go win the Cup? Everybody's like, what the heck are you doing trading Johnny Gaudreau? We could have won the Cup this year. Do you think that's the case?
Yeah, but they should have traded him before the season. That's my point.
Right.
I think right now the Calgary Flames have to get a handle on what Tkachuk is leaving. And if he's thinking that he's leaving, they've got to trade him now.
Right. What do you think? I don't know what he's making now.
He'll get 10 million.
Yeah, he'll get 10 million. I guess the other thing I'd like to argue with you. So I'll throw the other side of it out there. I guess the other side of it now, because the numbers are so big and because of the cap, the one advantage you do get is that you've now bought cap space, really. You've got more cap space. You're not paying Johnny Gaudreau 10. You're not paying Tkachuk 10. That's $20 million off your cap. But you still have to be able to replace that talent. The logic is...
Here's what I would say about that. Cap space doesn't score 40 goals for you.
I agree. Totally. Yes.
And they're Calgary. They're not the New York Rangers.
Yeah.
Their ability to recruit isn't as strong as other franchises. So while that cap space will come in handy, they haven't spent it yet. Yeah. Johnny Gaudreau has been gone a while. They've still got a pretty good team. And they haven't spent that cap space. Do you think it's because they didn't want to? I think not.
Or do you wait till during the season where some other team gets in cap trouble and is wanting to unload? You saw that with the Matt Duchene thing, right? Where everybody's like, oh, what is Joe Sakic going to do in Colorado there? You got to get rid of Matt Duchene. And he was boxed in and he waited until teams got in trouble with their cap. And then he was able to trade or he'd work a 3-way deal, right? And get him out of there. So, I hear you, but
I would trade him now if you really felt that he's going to leave. You got to really You can't ever be sure. I mean, what's probably true is he doesn't know.
Right.
He
When do
may-
you get your best? When do you get your best value for a trade? Is it at the trade deadline?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, now everybody can move assets and get
Yeah.
around. The Detroit Red Wings are in the same position with Tyler Bertuzzi, and I just wrote a column where I said exactly the same thing I said about Tkachuk. If you can't, they've had trouble, and trouble may be too strong. It's been bumpy. It's been bumpy in previous contract negotiations with Tyler Bertuzzi. And you know that because Yzerman doesn't really talk about it, but you get a sense. And, he got a 2-year deal last year that takes him right up to free agency.
Right.
If it hadn't been bumpy, we would have seen more years. Or I think the fact that we marched right up to I'm leaving or not, it kind of says that it was bumpy.
Right.
And he is very valuable. I mean, Bertuzzi's marketability is so high right now, coming off a 30-goal season, first in line when there's trouble, popular with his teammates, a character in the room.
So you think Steve Yzerman would want to trade him
in a minute if he can't sign him?
Okay, yeah.
Oh no, I think they're going to they're trying to sign him, but if you can't sign him and he just feels like a candidate to leave. Like Dylan Larkin are in the same boat. Right. He's a Michigan native. He's captain. I just don't see him saying, I want to test free agency. I just, I don't see him doing that. Now, I could be totally wrong on that, but I think the Red Wings feel, and plus, Larkin's making already $6 million and change. It's not a big jump to go to $9 million for the Red Wings. Right. 6.5 to 9. Right. Your payroll goes up to $2.5 million. It's really not that.
What's Bertuzzi worth then?
Well, Bertuzzi's at 4.75, and he was going to want at least 8. Right. Don't you think?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. That's what those numbers are getting.
So, and he's had one. I mean, he's been a consistent 20-goal scorer since he came out.
Right.
But he just got 30 for the first time.
Right.
So I don't know. The one thing about Yzerman that I think is, well, maybe it's not unique. Probably everybody sort of pushes this, but I think Yzerman really pushes it. When he negotiates, in the hockey world, we always want to talk about numbers. Arbitration is always about numbers. Yep. And Steve wants to talk about what do you do to contribute to our success.
Huh.
And some players get into that, and their agents, more importantly, and they get into it and they like it, because Steve wants to recognize the intangibles. Some do not.
Yeah.
Some want to just say, yeah, but he scored 30 goals. So,
or here, and the comparables too, right?
Right. Comparables. Well, that is numbers. The comparables are numbers.
Yep.
So, anyway, I think it's going to be interesting, and I think the Red Wings. I wrote a column for the Detroit Hockey Now website. I thought people would be upset about it, and pretty much the fans have all chimed in and said, "Yeah, of course. You can't let him. He's too valuable. You can't let him get away for nothing."
Right.
You got because what do you get for him? You get a first-round pick, a top prospect,
and it's different there too because Detroit isn't a cup contender right now, right? So you can trade a valuable player like that and get assets. And then, again, people are saying, "Well, we're rebuilding anyways, right?" So it's not like we're close to winning the cup like you would say Calgary was, and then you got to trade away. I hear you with that, and I hear you with Bertuzzi in Detroit. I guess my problem with Tkachuk is, I would wait to the trade deadline. Again, you run the risk maybe he gets hurt. And then
that's why I wouldn't do it. Yeah. The injury's risk is too great. I mean, like in Bertuzzi's case, he played 9 games 2 years ago.
That's right.
Because he got hurt. And Tkachuk, the way he plays, he could blow up as anyway. I just think, and that I don't see the Flames. I loved them last year when they had Johnny Gaudreau, but Johnny Gaudreau leaving takes away your top scorer. Now in my mind, they're not close.
Yeah.
So
And they were in on other free agents, right? And they didn't get any of those guys. So
no, now if Cadre suddenly comes around and says I'm going to Calgary, then maybe you think about it. But I trade them. I really do. This is a
okay. So now you've lost Gaudreau and Tkachuk off a team that was a Stanley Cup contender. So obviously you're not as good, right?
Well, you've got in theory now you've regained $20 million in cap space.
Right.
And now you didn't get anything for Gaudreau, but you're going to get a huge haul for Tkachuk.
Right.
So
but are you looking to replace Tkachuk, or are you looking to rebuild the team with picks and young players?
Well, I mean both. I mean they have some interesting players there. So I think you are. I don't know if you're not strip. I don't think you'd strip it down to the chassis, but I think you're reset. You're rebooting.
So so if you're going to go to okay, so Tkachuk is going to say to him, I'm assuming you say, okay, I want to get traded. If I'm going to accommodate your wishes here and tell you what I want to do, I want to leave the team and I want to go to St. Louis. Right.
Yeah. Well, you can. But what I would say to them is, we can try that, but I got to get a good return.
Right.
Or we're not going to do that. And I think every player will understand that. Plus, there's an ego thing. You want to go for a large amount because, so.
Right. All right. So if you're the player, then there's no guarantee you get to go where you want to go, at least for the next season. You can still go to St. Louis the next year.
Right. But here's the thing too. People keep saying that. Yeah, he's going to go to St. Louis and everything. I didn't see Brady Tkachuk go to St. Louis.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
His situation, that's what I'm saying. Maybe we're all wrong. Maybe Tkachuk doesn't want to stay in Calgary, and then you have no problem.
Yeah.
We'll get
the fact that he didn't file for arbitration, though, tells me he doesn't want to stay there.
Well, yeah. But, everybody said that about Brady, and now,
No, I agree with you. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. And again, I definitely agree with you in Detroit with Bertuzzi, because again, I don't view them as a contender yet. I think they're becoming that with what Yzerman's doing. So you're not that team that's everybody's going to go, what are you doing? We had a chance to win the cup this year. Now you're trading away one of our best players, right? And I guess you really can't say that in Calgary now either, now that Gaudreau is gone. So it's easier to do too.
Well, plus, I thought, I remember talking to you about it. I saw them play about I think I saw them play 3 times in probably a 7 or 8 day thing, including once live. And I thought, this Calgary team, they're hard to play against.
Yep.
And then later in the season, I saw them play against some good teams. And I was stunned how different they looked.
Yeah.
They didn't look like they deserved to be in the same rink with Colorado.
Colorado. Sure. And I saw the same thing when they came in here in New York early in the year too. You had told me that, and then they came in here shortly after that, and then they were really good. But then, they just so
I don't know, but I sure would trade them, and I don't know. The risk is so great. Like, how do you face the fan base if you lose Gaudreau and then Tkachuk and get nothing for either one? And I do understand the value of cap space, but I think cap space is more valuable in some places than others.
Right. Yeah, if you can draw, you're correct. If you can draw free agents in and use that cap space, then that's great.
Right.
But that's correct.
And they will be able to use that. Like you can get players, you can make trades, and some people will come and play for Calgary. I'm just saying, if you're trying to attract Claude Giroux or players of that ilk, Cadre, Cadre had a chance to go to Calgary earlier in his career, and he declined.
That's true. And you do have those teams like Vegas got themselves in cap trouble and had to trade away some valuable players like a Matt Pacioretty. So you've got that space for that as well. And you don't, and like in Don Waddell's case in Carolina, there you didn't have to give up anything to get Pacioretty. So he had the available cap space, and he was like a free agent almost. But
I wonder why, if they're as close as we think they are, why they didn't try to get Pacioretty for 1 year at $7 million. So,
good point. Yeah, right. Hey, do you see where Eddie Olczyk is leaving the Chicago Blackhawks?
Yeah, and I think this is just another indication of something's rotten in Denmark when it comes to the Blackhawks. If you can't come to an agreement with one of the nicest human beings in hockey, a popular figure,
talented,
from the Chicago area,
And he made no bones about it too, that it was a contract negotiation and they didn't get it done, right? So
it was length of contract.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
yeah, they just didn't want to commit to him long term.
To Eddie Olczyk?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And if you don't want to commit to Ed Olczyk, you've got a problem.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow, like all those things are true, and he's fantastic at his job, right? I mean,
he's terrific. Yeah. Like, who's better than Eddie Olczyk?
Nobody around.
No. Yeah, you could put people in the same, neighborhood with him. Certainly, there are good analysts out there, but Eddie, to me, seems to be the best. He's, he's quick on the net. He can microwave analysis. He doesn't have to slow cook it. Yeah. He doesn't ruminate a little bit. It just comes to him and it just flows out. He's very, very good. So I just see that as just another indication. And the fact that the Blackhawks said, I saw a great tweet. It probably was from the great writer Mark Lazarus, who has become the arch enemy of the Blackhawks. They don't particularly like him because he calls it the way he sees it, and he just laid out like all the people that they've swept out. By the way, even the PR guy that I knew well has gone from there.
That's a shame because way back the Chicago organization was poorly run. Nobody was in the building. And then they had a resurgence.
Rocky Wirtz was terrific when he came aboard.
Yeah, Dale Talon did a fantastic job. And then Bowman did a good job after that. They're all gone. And now, it gets back to that old, even the whole sex abuse thing, the way that was handled, the press conferences regarding that and everything was just,
everything is just gone downhill there. And the fact they don't seem to know, and I'll put in parentheses because I don't really know, and don't seem to care how Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews feels about it. The heroes of 3 Cup wins in 6 years. Yeah. Have they talked to those? It doesn't seem like they have.
Yeah, and then you go get Seth Jones, and now you're rebuilding, and it's it's kind of they really seem like they didn't know what they were doing at all when they went and got him. But
no, I don't know that this conversation didn't occur, but sure feels like it hasn't. Where they just called and said, "John, Patrick, I'm really sorry, but we're going to rebuild, and it's just." I just apologize to you. You didn't certainly see this coming when you signed this $10 million, but there's nothing else we can do. We're going to just rebuild. Right. I don't think that conversation ever happened.
It doesn't seem like it. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I certainly would do that. I don't understand. You want to be above board, and
for your reputation, like Chicago is a place that people want to play. It's based on the city, but if
great city,
but if the teams run that way. These top free agents, they know that kind of stuff. They don't want to get involved in that. So,
that's it's certainly different. This has got to be the fastest show, one of the fastest shows we've ever done. It's we're drawing to a close here, folks, and it feels like we've been on 10 minutes.
I know.
Anyway, we've covered some meatier topics today. We'll leave cooking for our next show.
Coyotes, we've seen our Coyote. Funny little quote here by one of our listeners. Coyotes are looking for a proper arena to play in, so that's what the Coyotes do.
Yeah, that could be. I didn't even think of that, but that's clever. But they're aimlessly, they're homeless. So one of them's wandering in my backyard. So, but I know enough about Coyotes to know. I just told my wife she's at our lake house and coming home with all 5 of my grandkids. Oh. And I just told her, the coyote, and we have coyotes in this area. It's not like I'd never seen them, but they're usually not brazen unless they're hungry. Yeah. And this one is just walking across our, basically our backyard. It's 3 acres, but he's walking across it like he doesn't have care in the world, and he's scrawny looking. So I just told her we have my daughter's dog while she's her and her husband are on a hiking trip with my other kids and their spouses. So all my family are all out hiking, and they've got one 9-mile hike and one 10-mile hike and all that kind of stuff. So
where do they do that? Where do they go?
It's in the Northwest somewhere. I'm not really sure exactly where they're at, but they're going out for that. Last year they did one of the state parks as well. So this is kind of a thing they do. Nice. But anyway, so I did say we'll have to watch our dog, and I'm concerned. There's 2 cats in the neighborhood.
You don't have the rabbits, do you?
We don't have the rabbits, but we have lots of rabbits on my I have 5 acres, and it's been a bountiful year.
That's right.
Apparently, the bunnies were busy.
Well, based on the way the bunnies wander around there in Chicago.
Yeah. Well, they're promiscuous. Yeah, as we know. So
I didn't know that. I didn't know that about bunnies.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we appreciate you tuning in on the Bunny Network here. But join us again. We'll talk more hockey next time around.
And if you want to listen to the radio version of this show, you can go to radio.co at 365 Sports. Everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you on Monday.